Hello and welcome to a new Samurai Gaming podcast. Yes, and I said that I don't want to do any podcast anytime soon, but times change, and I think some people wants to do something with me. Finally, woohoo! And I'm happy that he is back, and you know him well. We did the Assassin's Creed podcast last time. So, how are you doing? And who are you?
Uh, Thank you, Gary. I'm good, thank you. It's Harry, Harry Glenn Jones from the Gamer Social Club. I'm guides editor over at the site, and I am the host of the GSC Weekly News podcast. And yeah, this is my second time, which is very exciting. Glad to be back.
Yeah, and we are talking about the fourth anniversary of Rare Limited. I don't know if those guys are listening to this cast. It would be great. And to those who are listening of where Harry wants to do an interview with you, so please get in contact with you. And for before we start the podcast, the regular question is, what did you play the last time, and what was your impressions of that game
Is that of Rare's games or my last game of all games? Sorry.
in general?
In general, let me think. The last thing I played through that wasn't for the site, so just for my own gaming, was a little puzzle game called Gloomy Eyes, which I really, really enjoyed. We had it as a community game as part of the Gamer Social Club Discord, which we try and get games of lots of different types each month to play with members of the Discord. And Gloomy Eyes was one of the ones we picked, and it's an interesting one because it's a single player puzzle game where you control two characters. So it describes itself as sort of like a single player co-op game, which is quite funny. But you control two characters: a little boy who's a zombie, and a little girl who is alive, and they are sort of trying to make their way through a world that is very kind of like the world is scared of zombies. The sun has disappeared, and they're trying to bring back the sun and try and live together happily, because the boy and the girl sort of love each other, and they've got this like blooming relationship. But her father doesn't want them to be together, and they want to try and live happily despite this world they live in, hating what they are, hating the boy, the zombie. And it was delightful. It was very cute and creepy at the same time. Really, really good puzzles involving the two characters and their different skills. And it had a nice sort of visual style to it, and this really kind of cool, um, I guess you'd say almost like diorama kind of feel to it. I don't know if you're familiar with those sort of little 3D models of environments that you can see from all angles, and you could kind of do that with the game's camera. You could zoom out and look at a whole world because there were just little scenes basically, and you could see it from all different angles to find secrets, or check to make sure that there wasn't a trap or an enemy around the corner, that sort of thing. And yeah, really, really enjoyed that. I had a great time with it, and would highly recommend it.
Yeah, thank you. The two questions. Is it like Tales of the Two Sons? Because it is, you said you play two characters, and for people who don't know the game, is it like that? And for me,
Mm.
I'm not a puzzle gamer, so I'm not a fan of too much puzzle and so on. How much puzzles are in the game? And I saw some screenshots of it, and it looks very beautiful.
Yeah, so with your first question, I would say A Tale of Two Sons is a really good comparison to make. It's a little bit different because you don't control the two characters at the same time, which of course in A Tale of Two Sons from Hazelight, in fact the first game from Joseph Fares, and then going on to make Hazelight, sorry. you control both of the two characters, the brothers, or the two sons, um, who with one thumbstick joystick each. Whilst in Gloomy Eyes, you can switch between the two characters at any time, and control them one at a time. And then, yeah, when it comes to the puzzle aspect, it's not like you're doing um, sliding block puzzles, or trying to memorize codes or anything like that. It's not those sort of puzzles. It's more environmental. It's more figuring out how to get an item that you need, like a battery, from one part of the map over to another area where you need to then plug it in to turn on some lights that will then allow you to reach somewhere else. It's that sort of puzzling where it's not about yeah, it's not about make you rack your brains for the solution. It's about you looking at the environment and working out, oh, how do I get around this obstacle? How do I get my character over there? Those sort of puzzles more than anything.
Ah, I see. So, it sounds very interesting. And for the diorama thing you mentioned before,
Mm.
I can say that I played such a game. I don't know if you know it. It is called Flipping Death, and this was
Mm.
a really cool game for me. It's this 2D section where you play as a death, and you are doing Word in the Living and Word in the Underworld or in a Death Room, and it's really funny, and especially because you are a girl, you don't know anything, and now you are death, and you have to care about the people. It was really really cool.
Yeah, I remember playing Flipping Death a while back now. It must have been Xbox One generation. Really enjoyed that. And Zoink Games, who are the studio that did that, are a great, well, brilliant studio at the time. They've now, I think, been folded into Thunderful, where they now make games like the Lost and Random, the Eternal Die game, which came out this year. But yeah, great studio, really fun, funny games like Flipping Death, like you said, and Stick It to the Man, and Zombie Vikings, I think was another one. And yeah, funny enough, one of my dev interviews I did was with uh, one of the developers, one of the team members from Zoink Games, who was around for working on some of those titles, and then went on to work solo. Kevin Anderson, who released Paperclay this year, 3D platformer, which is very much inspired by games made by Rare, N64 era 3D platformers and collectathons, which is quite nice. That ties into what we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, we are talking about later, but first I want to mention what I played, and I played lately Assassin's Creed Shadows. I finally finished it after almost 140 hours, including the DLC. Um, and
Amazing.
I really liked it, and I think it has its weak points. The story wise could be a bit better, especially if you only play the main game. Then the
Mm.
ending is not really satisfying because you are missing some stuff, and through the DLC, you get more information and more story for that. And I think the historical thing could much be better. But I like the exploring about Japan, and I'm addicted to Japan a bit, and I really loved it. And yeah, I mean, open world is kinda. I don't know. Some are loving, some are hated it, and yeah. And I didn't play Odyssey or Valhalla, so I can't say about
Mhm.
that. I played Origin, and yeah, I think they did a good job, including two different characters because you play like an assassin, ninja, and on the other side a samurai, and you play and you know through history that a samurai plays different than an assassin. With a samurai you don't sneak around, you don't go on top of the buildings, etc., but with an assassin ninja you do the such things, and it's good that you have two different playstyles at once in the game, and I think that is unique, and yes, something different for the Assassin's Creed formula.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions for you. Well, first of course, well done, congrats on finishing the game, and it sounds, and from when we were talking about it in Discord and things like that, in our first conversation about Assassin's Creed Shadows, it sounds like you've really enjoyed it. With obviously some points here and there that you feel could be improved. One of the things I wanted to ask, because you finished the DLC, was with lots of the previous entries in the Assassin's Creed games, the DLC kind of all often takes the game in a more, I guess, fantastical, or I guess you could just say kind of crazier direction often, where the main game is more about like a character's story in the real world, and then the DLC might take you to somewhere like another place. Like I played Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and in the DLCs for that game, you left, the human realm and went to visit the gods and things like that. So I wanted to ask, like, what's the DLC like for Shadows? Is it similar to the base game, or like you mentioned that it adds more to the story? Is it quite crucial then to the narrative of the game?
I can say and confirm that it is different from the main game in
Hmm.
such that it is more brutal. It means, I mean with that, the main game you explore, you go through the enemies good, and you have your conversations. But at the DLC, you play on an island called Avaji, or
Hmm.
how it is called, and you go from the mainland, from Japan up to an island, and there the story continues. And for the main protagonists, and the thing is that it plays a lot of different because the enemies are a lot stronger, and I was not expecting that. I can say it.
Hmm.
I did expect that. For example, if you go through woods and so on, that was not in the main game. It was in the DLC. That you go to the woods, and the call it here, the the leaf of
Mm.
the trees are blowing up, and you don't know what's happening because it was a scary atmosphere because the fog come in and so on, and you go with your horse and ask what is happening now, and if you're not
Mm.
careful, you run about a massive Assassin's Creed, don't Assassin's Creed, Assassin's hideout, and the assassins attack you, and you don't know nothing about that. You only see a trap out of the way, which you maybe didn't see before, and that was really intense. And yeah, the enemies are a lot stronger, and that was a really fresh thing about Assassin's Creed Shadows. And I highly recommend anyone who want to play the DLC, please play it.
Yeah, it does sound good. So it sounds like a sort of late game, or maybe even end game sort of content for the game.
Yes, it plays after the main game, practically.
Ah, okay, cool. Well, yeah, again, have not found time sadly to get to Shadows, but would really like to. Um, it looks fantastic, and I think I want to try and see which of the two characters I kind of grow to like, or maybe I'll like both of them. Did you find you had a favorite out of Naoe and Yasuke?
I like Naoya the most, especially she's a girl. But of course, she's an assassin, and she has a really impactful story, and I liked her the most. Yasuke is really cool too, and has a good story too, and yeah, but in Assassin's Creed you are much more faster with Naue, and yeah, I liked her gameplay, and yeah, I really liked her. And for those who are aware of the 140 hours I played, I mean, you can complete the game in much more faster, but I wanted to take my time with the game and enjoy it. And how I said, I explore a lot and found some Easter eggs. For example, a Dark Souls Easter egg was there, and some anime reference. That was really cool.
That's cool. I wasn't aware that they had those sort of Easter eggs in there. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, but I think we are switching now to our main topic because you already mentioned WarWare, and we are talking about WarWare now. And yeah, we got some questions too. And before we go to the questions, we go to the history of Ware, and Ware was founded in 1985, and I wasn't born there. I was born 1986, so maybe I wasn't even planned. I don't know, but yeah, 1985 was the thing when Ware was founded, and fun fact: the first name for Ware wasn't Ware. It was Ashby Computer Graphics, and then after that they got the name Ultimate Play the Game. I think that's more a common name. And after that, Ware had the name Ware for it. So, Harry, what was your experience with Ultimate Play the Game, or the first Ware games for you personally?
Yeah, so like you, I wasn't even around when Rare was established. And I didn't, I guess, yeah, my first experience playing Rare was, I think, like a lot of people in our sort of generation, was more likely in the N64 period in the 90s, the mid to late 90s, because of course, Rare kind of became synonymous with Nintendo on the N64, and really kind of helped define that generation, alongside Nintendo, and of course the stuff happening on the PlayStation when that came along. Um, but they obviously were there working on games like Banjo Kazooie and Banjo Tooie, and then you've got Conker's Bad Fur Day and GoldenEye, Diddy Kong Racing, you know, Killer Instinct. There's so many titles that I eventually would have got round to playing. But I think the first one I played of all of their stuff was Banjo Kazooie, um, and makes complete sense. I was already a fan of platforming games. I had funny enough, I think if I remember correctly, timeline wise, got a PlayStation 1 before I ever had an N64. And thus I played other platformers first. So I was playing things like Croc, and Gex, Crash Bandicoot, of course, and Spyro. So then seeing Banjo Kazooie in the first game, I immediately fell in love with it. I loved the characters, the incredible humor that it is in all of Rare's games, but is so perfectly exemplified in Banjo Kazooie, I think. And yeah, I played it through the first time, and once I finished it, I played it through again, and would continue to keep playing it for years to come, and started my love affair with Rare as a studio, and later on I would go on to go and play older games from them from the 80s and things like that, and would continue to play their newer stuff as it came out. Through when they went to Xbox and so on and so forth. But we'll get to that. But yeah, I Banjo Kazooie would be my first, and it's still one of my favorite games. Probably in my top five. Um, yeah, it really kind of defined, I think, a lot of my tastes in games, um, and I've stuck with them ever since.
That sounds awesome, but I have already a question for that, because you
Hmm.
mentioned Gex and Croc and Banjo Kazooie. No, not Banjo Kazooie, but
Crash and
yeah, Crash Bandicoot. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. What were your thoughts on those games back in the day?
Oh gosh, I mean, again, I loved all of them. I mean, I can look back now and honestly say that I enjoyed playing Crash Bandicoot, but also it was not the sort of platformer that I was sort of most interested in. Its sort of more limited structure was interesting, but ultimately I enjoyed games that allowed me to go and explore, which Crash Bandicoot doesn't. That's not what it's about. It's getting from the beginning to the end of a level and hopefully getting all the apples by the end, all the Wumpa fruit. Um, but I loved playing Gex. Again, goofy humor. The whole like entering the different TV worlds and playing through these different genres, like a horror film or a cartoon or a spy film. Um, you know, I thought that was really fun, and again, interesting gameplay with crawling on walls and um, using your tongue to eat, different bugs that would heal you or give you different powers. Sounds very similar to something that a lot of the Rare team are now working on at a different studio, and will be maybe brought up again a bit later. But yeah, my favorite of all of them would probably be Spyro. I loved Spyro, which is an Insomniac title. Well, was originally. Now, of course, it's um, not. But I loved Spyro, the freedom of exploration in that game. Um, I feel like it's a great counterpart to Banjo in an interesting way. Um, they feel like they were sort of top of their class for that sort of generation. I feel like when it comes to platformers, um, again, you'd have to wait until PS2 for things like Ratchet and Clank and Jack and Daxter and stuff to come along. Um, but yeah, in that early 90s sort of era of gaming, um, arguably, as far as I'm concerned, the sort of golden age of 3D platformers. Um, yeah, Spyro was definitely the other one that I would point to and go like, that game is top tier.
Okay, but you mentioned also Croc, and I want to add to this that
Yeah.
for those who doesn't know it, it should be a Yoshi game at first glance, but then
Mhm.
Nintendo didn't want it, and so the developers went to PlayStation and made Croc, and this is also an interesting fact.
Hmm. Yeah, I wasn't aware it was originally being pitched as a Yoshi game. That's very cool to know. And crazy to think what could have happened if Nintendo had said yes. Um, Croc was again super sweet and super lovely. Like kind of the cutest of all the platformers in a weird way of all these very cute looking games with their cartoony graphics. Croc kind of always felt like the one that melted your heart the most, with its story and world and characters. And yeah, it's sort of, I guess that one is it's easily overlooked because the other ones get so much press and praise, obviously, like we've just given them, you know. But Croc stands, on its own 2 feet, amongst the rest of them, I feel. And I know we had the sort of remaster earlier this year. And again, I haven't had a chance to get to that, unfortunately. I would very much like to. Be love to go and try that out and sort of do a nostalgia run through the game because I honestly wouldn't be able to remember a lot of it. But yeah, no, Croc and Legend of the Gobbos was again a firm favorite of mine that when I had finished probably playing Spyro or one of the other ones, I would stick that on afterwards. Just because again, it always was nice to dip back in for some more Croc.
Okay, but back to Rare. When you played the first Rare game in this time, Banjo Kazooie, did you know that at that time that WarWare was a British developer?
Gosh, at the time, no, I would have been too young. I think I became aware of developers and studios and publishers in my sort of early to mid-teens. I think that's kind of the age where I began to understand like what the different icons, those different logos meant on the front of the box. I recognized Nintendo and PlayStation, of course, because they're the ones making the machine, like Sega as well. I grew up with, Sega Mega Drive or Genesis for the Americans. Um, so I was a big Sonic fan and Streets of Rage and Golden Axe as well, um, and all that sort of catalog. And I recognized all their logos because they were the ones making the machine I was playing the games on. But otherwise, the others, it didn't click with me who they were. Didn't really mean anything to me when I was younger. But then I quickly began to understand what they meant, who they represented, and then about the same time, probably would have realized like, oh wow, a lot of these games have the same logo on them. This big gold R on it. Who are these guys? Rare. Oh, interesting. I should keep an eye on them. They seem to make all the games that I really like because they're on Banjo, they're on Conker, they're on Perfect Dark, they're on GoldenEye, Diddy Kong Racing, all these games. And then, after that, once, they obviously moved on, I stuck with them and carried, seeing what they made. And then when they released the Rare Replay collection on the Xbox One generation, I went back and that's when I really dug into their past and looked at the games before the N64 era.
Yeah, and I want to mention that not only Rare comes from the UK, also Psychnosis, also a very famous developer, which made the Wipeout series on the PlayStation 1
Yeah.
back then. And I really mentioned this cool logo they had and the great artwork of Roger Dean, which I really liked. And yeah, and I just want to ask you, since you are from the UK, did you um, visit someday or travel someday to Tricross?
Oh, I would, yeah. I mean, I live actually not too far away from Twycross. I live about an hour, maybe, yeah, about an hour on the train. So it would be, very easy to go and visit and hopefully get a chance to meet the team and stuff like that one day. Would love that. They're very much sort of heroes of mine, and ones I would love to meet one day. And just before we move on, I just wanted to say, you mentioned Roger Dean, one of my favorite artists. Honestly, fantastic, and have a lot of his work and books on his work in my house. Yeah, big fan.
Yeah, I mean, I made the thing about Asia, and Asia is also a great British pop, not a pop, but a progressive rock band. And they had mostly the artwork of Roger Dean and of Rodney Matthews, which I also recommend to check out. But back to where.
Hmm.
They start first 1983 with some games on the ZX Spectrum. So, did you know someone, or did you have or had the ZX Spectrum back in the day?
No, my family was not very much into computers and had that before I came along. I think I helped bring my family into the digital age by being interested in video games from a very young age. And so anything they learned about when it came to computers and such, unless it was work related, was probably from me and then my brother when he was born later. So we didn't have a ZX Spectrum and had that growing up. The first console we had was a Sega Mega Drive or Genesis, as I said, and then later on we would get the N64 and the PlayStation One and Game Boys and things like that. So no, we were late for that generation, unfortunately. So as I said, didn't get a chance to experience early like beginnings of Rare and their games, but would go back to find those later, which is very cool.
Yeah, I experienced some games of the Rare Replay collection, and there are some of them. For example, Saber Wolf with it is a isometric game in the series, and yeah, it is hard to get into those games, I must say. And for me,
Yes.
I started back in the day. I got for my uncle back then when I was a child. Commodore 64 or an Amiga. I don't know which one of those. And
Yeah.
I played Donkey Kong. I played Pac-Man. I played summer games, winter games, and all of those stuff. And then I got a Super Nintendo, and after that, a Game Boy, and then I went PC only, and only my neighbors had a Mega Drive, Genesis with um, Sonic the Hedgehog. The first one I played that at with a school friend, and the neighbors had back in the day the N64 and the PlayStation 1, and I didn't get into the PlayStation 1 at all. Maybe that's one
Okay.
of the reasons I'm now an Xbox guy, but that's a different story. That would be go too far. Um,
Different timeline.
yeah, different timeline. And I knew the advertising for the Sega Saturn back then. And it was very, very, very weird back then. And
Oh yeah.
um, yeah, we played the most Mario Kart 64 and Donkey Kong 64, which was not my first Rare game, because I played my first Rare game was Donkey Kong Land on the Game Boy back then. This was my first
Mhm.
Rare game, and yeah, this is how I started.
Amazing. I love it because that's what's one of the best things about Rare, I think, is you know, that they're celebrating, sorry, their 40th anniversary this year. They've been around for 4 decades. I think that's one of the coolest things about Rare fans, or the fan base around Rare, is that you can ask anybody in there what their first game was, and you can hazard a guess based on age, but you can't be sure. There's so many. They've got such a huge catalog across so many different platforms over the decades that people could have come across Rare, as you said, like you first experienced them through the handheld on a Game Boy, whilst I experienced them on console on the N64 first. But people only a couple of years older than us may have experienced them, as you said, on a ZX Spectrum or something instead. And then people after us would have played their first game maybe on the original Xbox, and that's very cool. I don't think there's not many studios you can say that about, especially across different platforms like that. You've got your first party studios who've made their games for that platform for decades, sure, but they very rarely will make a game for another platform, of course. Very few exceptions we can point to, Insomniac being one of them, with something like Sunset Overdrive, when they predominantly made stuff for PlayStation. But Rare is a studio that has been very much tied to platforms because they were first party or second party studios to them. But they were never. You can't just say that they were an Xbox studio or a Nintendo studio. They were everybody's studio. They worked with so many different people on so many different platforms, and I think that's why Rare has been such an important studio, if anything, because not only have they done a great work and been and defined genres and things for decades to come, but also they have reached so many different people and made so many different types of fans of their work.
That is very true, especially when I look back at the Donkey Kong Country creation. That was really spectacular back in the day, and Rare wanted to use the best hardware for that and show Nintendo how they do their games, and that was, and I think Nintendo was blown away by them because of the technology they used, and yeah, and the 3D looking at the atmosphere, and that the ape do that, and that was really amazing for that time, 1994 back then.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that Rare have made it kind of part of their. I think it's kind of always been part of the studio's identity, even to this day, with it being a very different studio made up of different people. But they've always tried to innovate. They've always looked to use what is available to them as far as hardware and what they can do with that. And yeah, they're not. I don't think they're scared to be inspired by others and to then help inspire others from their own work. And you mentioned obviously stuff with them like Nintendo with Donkey Kong, and I love always hearing the story about how they were working on the Donkey Kong 64, and I think Miyamoto walked past one day and saw DK holding a gun because they were working on the coconut gun or whatever it was, and he sort of nearly sort of passed out from shock at seeing one of the Nintendo characters holding a weapon like that. And I think Rare were very, very worried that maybe that wasn't they were going to be taken off the game, but thankfully it didn't happen, and we got another incredible Rare title because of it. And they helped, and they again, credit to them, they've helped shape and design Nintendo's own characters in big ways, like Diddy and Donkey Kong. It's kind of amazing to think they've had such a impact on one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic, uh, you know, team entity, business, whatever you want to call it, in gaming with Nintendo. But yeah, just incredible.
Yeah, totally agree. And what I want to say is that did you remember the Funky Shop in the DK64?
Yeah, I think it would take a lot to forget, honestly. Yeah, and again, like Rare's humor worked so well with Nintendo. They understood the balance because Rare can be very, very rude. I'm sure you've played, or maybe even just seen bits from Conker's Bad Fur Day, and how crazy they got with that game. Have you played Conker?
Yeah, I played it a bit. I didn't finish it so far. I'm at the barn right now.
Yeah.
I played also the remake of that game on the Xbox, and yeah, and you see the charm of Rare, of course, and of course, don't forget the poo.
Of
You know
course.
what I'm talking about.
Oh yes, the Great and Mighty Pooh. Absolutely, you can't forget that. And that song again is just it's up. I think again, Rare is going to feature a lot in a list of iconic moments in gaming. A much probably most of it for their humor, and their silliness. But yeah, like they they, they have a way of making such incredible and memorable characters. And yeah, the Great and Mighty Pooh is certainly one of them.
But I want to say that Rare is not only on Nintendo's platform successful with the humor, it was also on the Xbox, especially on the OG Xbox and 360 era. But there was a time when Rare went nuts, in my opinion, and that was the Connect thing. And I think everyone here, including you, can agree that the Connect things they did wasn't a good idea. I mean, they tried to copy Nintendo with the Wii Sports thing, and yeah, I don't know if that was a
Mhm.
good idea for them as a company, and of course with the games itself. I mean, they could do another stuff with that, and I mean the Kinect had potential, of course, and but the
Mhm.
thing is, yeah, especially if you look at the Alien game. You know what I mean? On the
Oh,
Xbox One, which was really cool when you played it with the Kinect. That if you made a different voice, yeah, yeah, it comes and scares you maybe. And I didn't play it with the Kinect, and I know some made the experience with the Alien game, and that was a really tense moment. But yeah, I think for where it was the wrong the direction they went for.
yeah. This is how obviously this year thought a lot about Rare over the months. Waiting to see what they did, and seeing what they had planned for the celebration, if anything. And it got me thinking about how Rare have been around for so long, and that you can kind of break down, I think, Rare almost into their decades, the 4 decades they've been around, as like the 4 chapters in their story, and of who they've been as a studio and what they've done. And obviously, you've got the origin, the early days, the ZX Spectrum days, and things like that would be your first sort of decade or so. And then you go into the N64 era as the second one, and then you go into them being obviously acquired by Xbox, and becoming a first-party Xbox studio, and have been ever since. Um, and that would be the beginning of the third chapter, and in the 360, well, Xbox original, and then 360 era, for them. And you're right. I think that is a that if you're going to if you're going to sort of define it, it would be sort of, I guess, possibly referred to as the sort of the slightly darker age for Rare, where they it's not that they lost sort of a sense of identity or direction, but I think because they'd done so much with Nintendo and were clearly so heavily inspired from working with them, that it was hard to kind of pull away from that. Hence why obviously we had things like Banjo Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, and then we got things like Grabbed by the Ghoulies and Cameo, and then obviously we get what other ones were there? There was definitely a couple of others along the way,
Viva
but
Pinata,
my
we
point
got
being that
Perfect Dark
you,
Zero.
thank you, that was it. That was it. That's what I was trying to remember. Viva Pinata, which again is another iconic series from them, and it came about in a different time from the N64. But to your point, they obviously were still very caught up in trying to push hardware. As I said, they are always looking at what they can do, and the Kinect was the hardware to play with. They know how they understand how to use a console and what they can get out of that, and they'll always try and do what they can to uh, push that in its own way. But the Kinect was something new and exciting, and that for them, I can only imagine, was something that they wanted to get to grips with, because they could see new opportunities maybe. As you said, I don't think it worked out for them, sadly. I think they no doubt still did good work there and learned a lot from it, but it it I think at that point you start seeing Rare as a studio divesting themselves, kind of losing part of the identity that they had when they were part of, well, when they were working with Nintendo and those earlier days of Xbox. And from that point onwards is when you see them moving away from what they once were and becoming the Rare that we kind of see them as today.
Yeah, but I won't do that mostly in a negative way, because what people don't know is that Xbox allow Rareware also to made something for Nintendo, like Diddy Kong Racing DS, the port for the
Mhm.
DS they made, and at that time when they were at Xbox, and some other games like the ports for the GBA, Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3, and it's Mr. Pants. I didn't know about that game, and yeah. I mean, we got some games also. Viva Pinata Pocket Paradise for the 3DS, which I never
Oh, wow.
played.
Yeah.
But that were also games for other consoles. So we can't say that after the Xbox acquisition, all things were forgotten and bad. So that's my opinion, and
Mm.
I would say they had their charm again. And how I said, only the bad thing for me personally was the Connect games. And I mean, they made Killer Instinct at the Xbox One generation, which is also a great fighting game to this day. And
Mm.
if you never played it, please play it. It's also not it doesn't cost much, and you get a really great fighting game with all the DLC including. And I think I paid only in 9.99. It is really, really cheap. And after that,
Oh yeah.
Connect Sports Rivals, we ignore that. And that after we are calling with where we play and Sea of Thieves, of course, the last one.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I have to ask this question right now. When where was revealed that they wanted to make Everwild. What was your reaction to that? And nowadays we know Everwild never made the cut and is cancelled. And was that a good decision for canceling that game? And I mean, I don't know how long the game was in development. I think for a very long time, and that is not a good sign for a game. If a game
Yeah.
is too long in development, say it's the same for Perfect Dark, the reboot or what else they want to do. Not WarWare, but the other company. Um,
Mm.
but we are talking about Everwild. What was your impression for that?
Yeah. So when they first announced it, which I think again was sort of, I think it was first announced in 2018 or 2019. I can't remember exactly the date. Maybe I'm a bit off with that, but it was in development for a while because I think it ended up being about 8 years that it was sort of in what I guess you would refer to as sort of development hell, basically, um, where they struggled to work out what it was. But before getting into all that, when they first announced it, I was very excited because I had enjoyed what I've been playing of Sea of Thieves thus far, and again, Sea of Thieves was it, Sea of Thieves was more of a shock to me than hearing about Everwild because Sea of Thieves, of course, was a well, for all intents and purposes, a online only, multiplayer, PvE, PvP game, unlike anything that they had done before. And uh, as much as I was aware that you can't pigeonhole them as a studio, you look at their catalog of games and they've made so many different types of games. I never saw them as a studio making serious multiplayer games, especially online multiplayer games. Um, so Sea of Thieves was a bigger shock to me, but at the same time, I was willing to see what it was going to be because it was rare. I trusted them, and it paid off. To this day, I still play Sea of Thieves. I have community nights now every now and then in the week, which you yourself here have joined me for, which has been great fun. And yeah, it's again one of my favorite games. I play it with my kids, my family. I have different groups of friends I play it with, and a lot of, as I said, the GSC community. And I, I worried for a little bit when people were kind of, I think, quite critical of it at launch. When nowadays you look at it, and I think it not only is it thriving and grown to be an incredible game, but it's sort of is hampered by these older reviews that give it a worse score than it deserves. Um, that's a different topic of conversation, of course, but because of that, when they announced Everwild, I was excited because for me, I thought like, okay, it still looks like it's a multiplayer game, but it also doesn't look as big as what they've done with Sea of Thieves. So hopefully, this is going to be a more curated experience in some way, similar to what we've had with the worlds of things like Banjo-Kazooie, um, and those sorts of games. I don't know. Not to say that it was just going to be like another third-person adventure game, but it looked like they were doing something, um, if anything, to appeal to an audience that probably wasn't interested in Sea of Thieves, but was still Rare fans. So Everwild to me was that opportunity to have something that maybe could be played solo and really immerse myself in it, or possibly with some friends and have a really good time playing with them. But in a world that again was fully made by Rare and hopefully had a lot of the sort of the charm and creativity that all their previous games have had. And that's what it looked like it was going to be. Again, we know so little about it in regards to what it was going to be because again, from the amount of time it was in development, they clearly struggled to kind of figure out what they wanted it to be as well. And eventually they would get people like Greg Mails in, who one of the, again, icon of the industry, legendary for, his involvement in so many of the IPs that defined Rare's history and catalog. And they brought him on to sort of try and sort of right the ship and bring it Everwild home. And even with someone like him at the helm, they were unable to do it. Now, is it because, they were just having its sort of difficulty with the team itself trying to figure out what they wanted to do, or was it a matter of you know knowing what they needed to do, but ultimately it not sitting with what was the greater plan within Xbox and things like that for games that they wanted? Who I don't think it can be said for certain that it was one thing or another, but at the same time, I'm glad that we didn't get a game from Rare that could have pushed them back into a place where they were during the 360 era, where, okay, you may not be thrilled that Sea of Thieves is the thing that they are currently working on and is their biggest game to date, and they will continue to support it going forward because you wish that they were going and making smaller games that were meant for more single player experiences. Even the long requested, Banjo 3. The thing is that studio Rare that we see now in front of us with their nice new ruby logo is not the Rare from those previous chapters, those previous generations and decades. It's a different team, and um, we have to accept that we can't expect the old from them, and we should hope for something new from them. But that comes with risk. You if you're a studio like Rare that will not be pigeonholed and will constantly be trying out new things and wanting to find new ways of expressing themselves through their medium, you have to take risks. That's part of the deal. And they did that with the Connect stuff. They did that all throughout their time at Nintendo, and they did it before that as well. And they've tried doing it at Xbox, and it's worked sometimes, but also there have been a number of times when it's not. And with there already being a number of dark spots on their record, I'm sad that it's not happening, but I'm also relieved that they don't have another one with Everwild that could quite possibly have been another mistake, another fumble. Um, Now, what does that mean for Rare going forward with everything that's happened? Obviously, the big layoffs that occurred, the studio shutdowns, among which um, was the initiative that were the studio that were making the Perfect Dark reboot. So, that whole enterprise is completely gone now. Um, And so, with Rare having to let go of Everwild and them focusing more on Sea of Thieves, no doubt, and Xbox no doubt being like, look, you've got to keep this thing afloat, you've got to keep it going. I don't know if we'll hear anything about Rare making another game for a while, and that's the thing that worries me the most, if anything, is that we may unfortunately be looking at a studio that has had its best years, and whilst it may continue to be successful, it may not make much else other than what we get with Sea of Thieves, which is something I'd be grateful for because I'm a fan of the game, but I do not see that as a worthy sacrifice for not seeing what other things Rare could do.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I wish they would make more games, and of course that Microsoft would use the IPs more. I mean, we had companies like Toys for Bob, for example, where they made Spyro and Crash games again, and I think there would be a potential to do a Banjo-Kazooie game, of course. But I want to say that where was not also always the creative ones and the charming ones. They also did first-person shooters, which was really incredible that time. I
Mhm.
mean the of course, the Golden Eye game of James Bond was incredible on the N64, and you could also play that with two controllers in one hand to have a second analog stick. That was really funny, and
Right.
of course, Perfect Dark, where I want to give a shout out to Fossil Fur. Because if you don't know her, she's an American fan of Perfect Dark and especially Perfect Dark Zero. And I have to say that the community is very, very strong on Rare sites. And of course, for some games, Perfect Dark, maybe Banjo Kazooie, maybe also Conquer. Um,
Mhm.
they want to have such games again, and we saw that at Perfect Dark reboot that Microsoft wanted to do that. And I'm also wonder that um, Microsoft gives the people who develop the things a lot of time for that. I mean, they could say you have to do that in this or that timeline, and that and if it doesn't work, that was it. But we saw that in Everwild. We saw that with Perfect Dark. That yeah, they gave them 7 years or much more, and if that doesn't work, they pull the plug. And I mean that makes sense for a business perspective. And it was sad what was happening with the Perfect Dark reboot for that. I mean, you saw that with the news first that a company was in it, then Crystal Dynamics,
Mhm.
which made the Tomb Raider games, was in it, and nothing came with it. And yeah, and nowadays the people was relieved that the Perfect Dark reboot was not made because some decisions they didn't like or so. I don't. I'm not into much into the reboot because we
Mhm.
didn't get it, of course. But what are your opinions on that? And of course about the community that wants and and lives the rare games.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I would count myself as someone in that community. I, like a lot of people, have called for whether it's a full remake of the first game, even just to kind of test the water and see if there is an actual audience for it. But I would love to see a new Banjo game. I would love to see a new Conker, or hell, do another Viva Pinata, or a cameo even. I think if you wanted to just if you weren't sure of whether or not it's worth dipping back into this, as you said, Rare have so many strong identifiable IPs. They may not be generation defining or anything like that, all of them, but there I think a lot of them will have enough of an audience that they will find uh, that there are people willing to put money down for these games still. Um, and again, a game that is coming out, well, releasing as of the time of we're recording this tomorrow, Yooka-Laylee, of course, which is being made by Playtonic Games and is, for all intents and purposes, the kind of spiritual successor to Banjo Kazooie. Um, we'll have to see how that does, because that will really kind of say a lot about whether or not there is an audience, a community who are willing to put money down for these sorts of games still. Because I don't think the rare audience is the sort that is going to be that, I think a lot of the rare audience are Platonic fans as well because of the connection and knowing who they are and what they make. Um, so I think hopefully enough of the fan base understands that you are not going to get a lot of these games from Rare at Xbox now because it is a different studio. However, as we've said, Xbox has all these IPs. They have had the opportunity to work with certain studios, whether it's Toys for Bob or um, uh, well, when they had them, obviously like Tango Gameworks and things like that, making Hi-Fi Rush and all sorts of things. Like they have such a huge stable of studios of incredible talent, hardworking, dedicated people who uh, make amazing things every day for us to play. Um, and they seem either reluctant to do it because it's not going to make them enough, even though it's probably still make money. It very much feels like a lot of the time that these companies, these big companies, want it to either be all the money or don't bother doing it at all. They're not willing to do smaller games, smaller projects, double A games often, more often than not, um, because they just don't see enough money from them. I guess is what happens. Sadly, there's not enough opportunity for them to make huge amounts of profit from them. You know, um, they're happy to do that. Like Xbox again are happy to do that with certain studios because that's the reason why they bought them. Double Fine being I think like the best example of that. That is a studio that will never make a big, as we understand it, AAA kind of Coalition, Bethesda, Naughty Dog size game. That's not that studio. Tim Schafer and Lee Petty and those sort of not Lee Petty, sorry. Yeah, Lee Petty. I can't remember. Sorry, apologies. Not going in front of me right now. But those people, those creative people, are going to make certain types of games that are weird and interesting and exciting, like Keeper that we're about to see come out, and the Psychonauts series and stuff like that. So it's like if Xbox is willing to let them play and enjoy their creativity, as well as people like Josh Sawyer from Obsidian making Pentiment and stuff like that, like and again Tango Gameworks making Hi-Fi Rush, like they have these successes and then they're so quick to just dash them, to throw them away because it just didn't do enough for them, and that I think is possibly the biggest obstacle getting in the way of us seeing anything like a Banjo 3 or any of these IPs coming back because Xbox is just sort of, either we go big or we go home. There is no in the middle. We have to make a Perfect Dark reboot, which is going to become the new standard of immersive sim first person shooter espionage games, or we just don't make it at all, you know. And I think that's the biggest issue that faces us right now. I would love to see something come from Rare's catalog, made by anybody. Frankly, it doesn't bother me who's making it. I love the IPs. Um, I know that the studio probably isn't the right studio to have them make a new Banjo or Conker game or whatever, but there are studios out there that can, as we just said. Toys for Bob being probably the first in line to make anything like that. Or, hell, if somehow was able to be wrangled, Platonic, of course, reach out and be like, look, let's get the band back together. That'd be amazing. But yeah, I
The
don't
band
see
of
that
Conker.
happening. Yeah,
The
exactly.
Beatles.
We can play all the old hits. It'll be great. But yeah, I just don't know. I mean, do you think there's a chance that we'll see something, or are you unfortunately like me and feel a bit like, well, I think unfortunately Xbox aren't interested.
To be honest, as an Xbox, I don't know if I am an Xbox fan. It's some form, but I liked Xbox, and yeah, I don't like everything that Xbox does, of course. And
Mhm.
so I'm not a fanboy. So sorry, guys, girls who are listening. I'm not a fanboy for that. and and I just want to say that I kind of agree and disagree with you because the thing is, in my opinion, all the great developers, if it is Nintendo, if it is Sony, if it is Xbox, all of them lost one thing in the seventh generation of hardware, and that was for those who are older, the Xbox 360, the PS3, and the Wii, and that was creativity. After that generation, all fell down. Okay, we can say with Nintendo, the Wii U was kind of okayish, I would say, in the creativity, and sadly it wasn't successful for Nintendo as they planned for. And but I saw that before they announced the Switch 2, that I felt a lot of interest in Nintendo. That I don't want to play the new Metroid game. I don't want to play the Tears of the Kingdom game because it felt like nuts and bolts, the official Banjo-Kazooie 3. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it was strange that Nintendo um, and Sony and Xbox is doing, and I miss the creativity, the risks in the industry, and this is an industry problem for me. And I mean, there is hope with the indie scene, of course, and of course, how you mentioned Toys for Bob and the other companies. And I want to give a big shout out to Tim Schafer and his company, Double Fine. It is also is amazing what they do, what they are doing, and yeah, and but before we go further on that, I want to stop at that point and want to focus to the questions we got, because
Hmm.
maybe some listeners are waiting for the announcement and so on. And I think it is important to go to the first one because it fits to that. And the first one
Hmm.
came from duct tape. And the biggest question is why they haven't made a Banjo or Conker game in forever. And I would say they tried that. So far as I know, they tried to do another Conker and another Banjo game, but they were cancelled or wasn't really to make the impression for Xbox. Okay, I don't know for that. But what are you thinking about that? I mean, we talked about it forever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think what makes the Banjo 3 thing in particular so sad is that we can go back and find and see like the trailers that they showed off for the original, no doubt the original pitch for Banjo 3, which was just again going to be another, looks like, classic kind of, level-based sandbox kind of exploration platformer collectathon like Banjo Kazooie and two before it. Um, and then something happened where Rare decided, oh no, we want to include this vehicle mechanic where you design vehicles and you make vehicles, and then you're going to use these vehicles and specific missions in these open environments, and we're going to get rid of a bunch of the collectibles, and we're going to get rid of a bunch of like the moves you can do, and the cast is going to be different, and it was a big departure while staying with the IP, and I think that's why for a lot of people there's a sort of a level of animosity towards nuts and bolts, because it's a game that you can look at and go, hey, yeah, this is a great game, it's fun, it's got a really really cool, again, inventive and unique mechanics with the craft, the kind of vehicle crafting and things like that. but it's not a Banjo Kazooie game. It's something else. It you could have made a new character and given them this game, and we probably would have all thought this is brilliant. You know, um, but instead you chose to use the IP to leverage and try and get this over the finish line. Probably not thinking that it would be poorly received the way it was, or not, maybe not poorly received, but as not well received as it was from the fans. But unfortunately, it was different enough that yeah, people were disappointed. I certainly was at the time. I can look back now and appreciate it for what it was, but it still doesn't mean I'm like a fan of the game. Um, and yeah, I think as soon as that happened, um, whether it's because I think at that time again you had the sort of the split happening. Rare was, as I said, divesting itself of who it once was. A lot of the original team, or the team that were in Nintendo, a lot of those sort of people were leaving and going off to then set up Platonic and or go, fully independent, like Grant Kirkhope and people like that. Um, it's those were the earliest signs, obviously, that we weren't going to get any more Banjo, and then thus probably not anything else like Conquer either. And yeah, as we said earlier, I think the main reason for not seeing another one is because I think there's a part of it which is that the team won't be, isn't interested, because again, it's different people working there now. They're not as familiar with it. They may have love for the IPs and things like that, but they just don't feel like they can do it justice, maybe, or haven't got the ideas for it. Um, but then I also think, yeah, like I said earlier, I think Xbox are not as interested in certain ones, even if they may be big, but they are not big enough to make more the amount of money to get the amount of profits that Xbox want, and that's why, yeah, we won't. Well, sadly, I don't think we will see another one.
Yeah, that's true. And how I said, I would say that to all companies, all big companies out there. But I would add to that. Do you think that there is maybe a big pressure on that? I mean, if you're a game developer, like and working in Rare, for example, do you think there's a big pressure for development a new Conquer or Banjo game or something else, or do you think we do Sea of Thieves content and we are fine. And um, if we do a new Banjo game, for example, or a new Conquer game, we could do that with no problem.
I think, and again, I this is purely speculation. I haven't spoken to anybody. I'm just this comes to mind, which is that there was a interview of the creative director for Ghost of Yotei on the MinMax YouTube channel, and during that interview, they asked the question, because of course it's Sucker Punch, the studio making who made Ghost of Yotei. Um, they made the Sly Cooper series, which again is another one of my favorite platformers, another brilliant 3D platformer. Um, and they were asked, would Sucker Punch be interested in making another one? And the director's response was, I think if I asked around the studio, about 10% of the team would be interested in making one. And I kind
Ooh.
of think that's probably where we're at now with Rare. I think Rare is now a team that if you asked around the office, hey, does anybody want to make a Banjo? Hey, does anybody want to make a Conker? Hey, does anybody want to make a Viva Pinata? I think the majority of people are going to say no, not because they don't like them, just because that's not what they're interested in. That's not the type of game they want to make. Those aren't the characters they want to work with. Those aren't the ideas they want to try and explore. Um, so I don't think you have enough people there even to try and have like a little crack team splinter off just to make a game like that. I think again, if we are going to see anything like this, and I think honestly, if again, I am in no way experienced enough to offer this sort of advice to a studio as revered and experienced as Rare and all the people who work there. But if I was to suggest something to them, it would be to have them partner up with another studio like Toys for Bob, and essentially have Toys for Bob develop a new game like a Banjo with Rare in partnership. So there is the tie, there is the logo, there is um, the DNA present, to give fans the belief needed. I think with Toys for Bob, fans would still be okay with it because it's Toys for Bob. They've proven that they can do it. But at the same time, having both the Toys for Bob and the Rare logo on the box, if not that we'd get a physical copy probably, but on the key art when you're buying it from the online store, um, I think that would be a really good move right now for them, given what has happened with things like Everwild. This is 2025, the 40th anniversary of Rare, and what do we have to celebrate for it? The cancellation of their next big game IP that they've been working on for 8 years or so. That's the headline from this year for them, and that's no way to celebrate a 40th anniversary. Something that puts them in a very, very small, exclusive club of teams in gaming. There are not many that can boast being around for that long and be as influential and celebrated and loved as Rare. And so yeah, I think if I was to suggest anything, and not that they'd be able to make it this year, of course, it'd probably take a while, but I would say, hey, Xbox, Rare, get in touch with someone like Toys for Bob, and work out something where you can get a game that a lot of people have been looking for and waiting for a long time, and it's not going to be even remotely close to the budget of a Halo or an Uncharted or anything like that, or a Last of Us. These games don't require that much money. They don't. They require a lot of money. All games require a lot of money, but we're not asking for cinematic cutscenes and things like that. We're not asking for mocap work. The voice acting is going to be squeaky noises. It's this is not a project on the same scale as those other ones, and thus there is lower risk, and that risk is spread then diminished, if anything, when you get the right people involved, and we know who they are. There is no mystery as to who could possibly make a Banjo game. We already have a couple of answers, so it's there. It's whether or not they are willing to do it.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I would sign that up immediately. And yeah, not only with Toys for Bob, also with Double Fine, it would be great. It's also the Xbox banner, under the Xbox banner, because Double Fine is also an Xbox company, and that would be also a relief to see this two together. And yeah, I totally agree with you, but it would be a bit difficult if it would be Perfect Dark, or it would be for example, a remake of GoldenEye, for example. But
Of course.
this would be a different thing. So I continue the things, and I asked the people also about the impressions they had with Where, and Ducktape says impressions they were definitely at their peak during the N64 era. I wish they had kept releasing games at that quality level. I mean, that's subjective. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the peak was N64, but I would say also Super Nintendo and a bit original Xbox maybe. But
Hmm.
yeah, how we said the worst thing was the Connect, and yeah, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and he said with the games. He has no impressions on that, other than maybe just how silly Iron Sword was. Through it was widely frustrating. I didn't play Iron Sword. It is also not at the Rare Replay collection. So, did you play
No,
Iron
sadly.
Sword? And how was your impression on that?
No, sadly, I haven't played Iron Sword. I've played a lot. I've played, I think, almost every game, if not every game, on the Rare Replay collection. Saber Wolf and all those sorts of titles. Um, gosh, yeah, Jetpack. Uh, gosh, yeah, there's so many great games on that collection. I should go back to it and go through some of those challenges. But no, yeah, sorry. Unfortunately, I haven't played that one that Duct Tape mentioned. Um, I'll have to look into that because again, as a ghost, it proves just how frankly incredible Rare are as a studio that they have so many games. Um, and you know, this is it. People will come across Rare in the strangest of ways, and it's always worth finding out how people came into contact with them. I will say though, I will push back, not push back, but I will say subjectively from my point of view, I do believe that Rare. I think the Sea of Thieves is still some of Rare's best work. It may not be the game that you want from them, but honestly, as much as it may be overlooked in all the award ceremonies for best ongoing game or game still I'm still playing, categories for awards, which are always full of the same ones like Fortnite and Call of Duty Warzone and Apex Legends and stuff like that. Rare have, I think, made one of the best online multiplayer games, uh, you know, with Sea of Thieves. And I think you look at the way they've supported that game and the way it's still going all these years later. Um, two incredible expansions with the uh, Pirates of the Caribbean and the Monkey Island editions, and in particular with that Pirates of the Caribbean one because it's a partnership with Disney that no one knew about. It was a complete surprise when it was announced. Um, and even in that year when it came to the award ceremonies, they were snubbed for anything, and they have been pretty much I think since the beginning. And it goes back to my point earlier of these negative reviews that linger from the earlier days and stuff like that. I think Sea of Thieves has kind of got a bit of a cloud hanging over it because of this sort of stuff, and it doesn't get the a fair shake um, as the others. And yeah, as I said, if it's not your sort of game, I completely understand. As I said, I was surprised and a bit disappointed when it was announced, but it has become one of my favorite games, and I do believe it is some of their best work as a studio.
Personally, I would say that I would like to play with you the expansions because I didn't play that much. I played a
Oh
bit of
yeah.
the Pirates of the Caribbean ones, not the other one, sadly.
Mhm.
I would love to play that with you and the community, of course, too. And too short
Definitely.
about that. But I want to go to the last question of the day, and
Mhm.
it also goes to the N64 era a bit, and a bit of the future. And it is a question of Nathan the Dragon. You know him well, I
Mhm.
think.
Yes.
And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he asked, my question would be if Donkey Kong 64 came back, would a simple port of the game be enough for you, or would you like to see a remaster remake?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I think now, if you'd asked me this maybe like last year, before we had any idea that there was going to be a new Donkey Kong game with DK Bonanza, obviously, which came out earlier this year. I probably would have just said like, oh yeah, a remaster. That's enough for me. A lick of paint on the visuals, and maybe a couple of nice quality of life updates. That sort of thing. But otherwise, like I would have been like, yeah, just a regular remaster. I would be super happy to have that. Especially if you're just putting it up on the online store for £30 or whatever, not a full price, 70, £80 or, sort of game. Completely, completely get that and would be happy for it. But now that we've had DK Bonanza, there's a part of me that's now like, oh, I want to see that remade. I want to see that remade, not because it needs to look like in the same style as DK Bonanza, although I'm sure, it'd be fun for them to be able to give you the option to look like the original Donkey Kong design or the new Donkey Kong design from Bonanza. Um, but yeah, seeing that game in action, I have unfortunately not played it. I don't have a Switch 2. One of these days, maybe. But I I think, yeah, I think having seen that game and heard such great things from it, and no doubt it will be in the conversation for Game of the Year, uh, and no doubt rightly so. I think a remake of that game would be amazing. Just because Bonanza sold me on the idea that actually, yeah, it's better to not just do a visual update, but like give it a full rework, because I'm sure you could do some stuff in that game that I can't even think of that would elevate it in some really fun and exciting ways. You don't have to have it so you could smash the level to pieces by any means, but I think seeing the creativity they had with the sort of move set they gave Donkey Kong in that game, um, I think it could be a really really cool game to be remade, and well, yeah, probably a good front runner for a game from that era to be remade for that reason. If anything, there's a good example of that game that has just come out. If you were to make it now, and we can see how good it is, so go for it. That's what we need for Banjo. And that's what I mean when I say, like, if we want to hopefully see a new Banjo game, the best chances we have are for us to see Yuka Replay do really well when it launches, because it means that there are people there who want that type of game, which is exactly what ukulele is. They are the spiritual successors. They carry the crown of Banjo Kazooie, in every way, and it's important, I think, that that game does well, because it is the best indicator that and not just to us as a fan base, but to the people in charge of the decisions, the people who make the decisions as to what is going to get made and how much they're going to fund it and all the rest of it. How long does it have for development? We need those people to see a game like this succeed, and that is going to be the proof they need to say, okay, let's go for Banjo 3. You could replay these done really well. It sold this many copies. It means it's made back its money. It's gotten a bunch of profit. Playtonic Games are super happy with it. If we get a smaller team like Toys for Bob to do it for us, we can get the same level of success. And that's all for us. We don't have to stick it on. Well, they will do, because it's Xbox now. Obviously, they've changed as well. They'll put it on every other platform, no doubt. But point is that it will be their IP, not a third party one. And they can do that with. So, yeah. I think a remake of that, of DK, would be great. And yeah, that it could be the best way to prove that to others that we should make another Banjo or Conquer or whatever.
Oh, it's finally here, performing for you, all the DK crew. It's DK, Donkey
Yeah,
Kong.
exactly. And if anything, that's the only real reason you want to remake, is just to have the UK rap done again. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, and I agree with you. If Toys for Bob would make it like in a style of Spyro, it would be awesome, I think. And yeah, if Nintendo would do that for other platforms as well, it would be much more better. But it is Nintendo, where we can't expect that for that. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and I think it would be great. And but also I'm kind of sick about this is also a problem of this generation. We make remasters, the all those things, because all games want to get a remake or remaster, even if the old one is still playable. And everybody who is listening and is playing games has to ask, do I want to support it? Do I want to play another Final Fantasy VII remake, even if I have the original? Do I want to pay 70, $80 for a remake, um only because it is a remake of a game that I like? Um, even I like, even if I have the original here or something else. And I think personally, I would agree uh, if we get a remake or remaster, uh, if some reasons for that. Mm, I would get a remake or remaster of a game if it is not possible to play those games on a modern system. I mean, with
Hmm.
backwards compatibility, we have a good thing, and I hope Xbox continue with that. I really hope it, and I'm not sure about that because the recent Xbox things are a little bit complicated. I would say at its best,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm not a fan of Nintendo Switch Online at all because you have a you must have a subscription to play those games, those old games. I mean,
Mm.
this is a good thing that you can play those old games on a modern hardware, but you don't own them. And yeah, I don't know if it is a good idea for the future. And I liked the Virtual Console much more on the Wii and the Wii U back then
Mm.
because you
Yeah,
own the
yeah,
game and you play the game and you have the old games on the hardware. Even if you
yeah,
pay, for example, I paid 1999 for Super Mario Galaxy 2, and nowadays you get the same game for about double the price. And I think why? And
yeah, yeah,
especially with Mario Galaxy, which was on the 3D collection on the Switch, and now a
yeah,
second time. I don't know about that, but this is greedy as fuck. And yeah, and we could say that about Xbox and PlayStation as well too. And um, I was a little bit really surprised. So sorry if I was a bit loud for that. I was a bit surprised about the thing you said in this podcast earlier that the developer of the Sucker Punch company doesn't want to make a Slay Cooper game. That makes me a bit sad. Also because they made
yeah,
an Easter egg in Ghost of Tsushima, if you remember that. You get the
yeah.
raccoon thing on the
Yes,
thing, and that was really awesome, and I really loved
yes.
that. And if you say that the developers uh, aren't making anymore such things, that makes me really sad. And yeah,
Yeah.
but
I was disappointed to hear that too.
that's another topic. That's only my opinion about remakes and remastered. Maybe you can say something about that. And after that, we go to the future of where I would say.
Hmm. Yeah, I think, well, again, I think people's, uh, maybe I can't speak too broadly on this. I think so, at least with some people in the gaming community, we are developing a better understanding of what are the differences between like a remaster and a remake, not just in the technical sense of what's being physically done to change the game, like it graphically and things like that, but also I think we are more understanding of the idea that with a remaster, you are staying true to the original. We are not changing the foundation of the game itself. Everything that as you played it will be the same. It may feel a little bit different, but you're still doing the same things, uh, and going forward. Whilst with a remake, with things like obviously, Silent Hill 2 remake, the Resident Evil remakes, um, we've we've had a number of games now, uh, where things have been changed with them, and fans in general have been happy with it. They've understood the reasons behind it, or again, it's been explained, and thus people understand like the developers were not able to do something when they first made the game so many years ago, and they wanted to fulfill that image. Again, Metal Gear Solid, Snake Eater, the Delta one. Too long a name. That's another good example of another remake that's done things differently, but I think the fan base in general are very happy with. And that's kind of what I mean when it comes to the idea of making a new Donkey Kong game or remaking the Donkey Kong game is you would have it so it still is a the same style of game, same genre, but you could add things to that game, to elevate it, take inspirations from what Nintendo did with Bonanza and add to it in interesting ways that are new to the original, but ultimately enhance the experience. Um, I would argue that that's the sort of thing, in a funny way, it's sort of cyclical. It kind of goes round in a circle where when Rare were working with Nintendo back in the 90s for the N64, they were inspired by what Nintendo were doing when they were making their games. Um, I would argue that with this generation where we are now, this year, that Nintendo would have benefited from looking back at a Rare title from the N64 era with Diddy Kong Racing and tried to let themselves be a bit more inspired by that game when it came to the Mario Kart World, because I look at a game like Mario Kart World and I do not see that being the same level of inventiveness and kind of genre defining as what Mario Kart 8 was. Um, now you can't always keep making games like not everything's always going to be better than the last one, but with that series in particular, I think Nintendo have made it a pretty good effort to try and keep improving on themselves. And I think World feels a bit too derivative. I think we've seen that sort of stuff already with things like Forza Horizon 5, with the open world nature of that game in a racing game. I think there's so much more you can do in that game as well. It's so much more exciting and appealing than what you can get up to in America. Yes, they're different types of racing games. I understand that. You can't make a direct comparison, but ultimately, it does feel as if Mario Kart World was just looking over at what other racing games were doing at the time and just doing that, as opposed to maybe going back and having a look at an older title that I think would have benefited them, like Diddy Kong Racing. And my reason for saying that is because with the way Diddy Kong Racing was designed, with the way you explored that world, far smaller than something like what you have with Mario Kart World, but you take that sort of design ethos from a game like that with the ability to go finding secret little secrets in the environment depending on which vehicle you're flying around in, and there being fun things to do in the hub world and not just doing races and finding stuff. Like, I think it would have benefited them to actually take a leaf out of Rare's book instead of it being the other way around, fulfilling that circle, as I said, and um, using some of Rare's game design in their own work. And I think we would have actually had a better we would have had a better game in Mario Kart World.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think that
I,
this time Sonic Crosswords would win the racing game for me personally.
absolutely,
And I think
yeah. I mean that
they learn for what they made wrong with with the previous game. And Sonic Crosswords, I played it and I have a video on my channel and I really loved it. And yeah, and I will buy it later if when it's a little bit cheaper. And I really loved what I see, but I want to come back a bit to Rare and ask you two questions before we end this cast. First, what would you say is for you the most underrated game that were made? That's the first question, and the second one, um, to talk about the future of WarWare and Platonic and Double Fine and so on. What would you wish in the future of Rare? And
mm,
what could those companies like Toys for Bob, like Double Fine and um, Platonic, what can they learn? And Yeah, and I mean, after replay, there have to be another game, of course, and I still need to play a possible layer more because I like that a bit,
Yeah,
and that's another one. But I mean, they have to go forward, of course, too, and yeah, that's about the future. But before we go
yeah.
to that, what are the most underrated game in your opinion that no one has maybe on their radar?
Gosh, that's tricky. I mean, in a funny way, you could probably pick one from each decade for them in a funny way. I think, they've got their big ones. Obviously, a lot of them around the N64 era, but even then, I think, uh, something like Diddy Kong Racing is often left by the wayside over Mario Kart 64, of course, which I understand. Whilst Banjo, I think, because it builds on what Mario 64 was doing in so many ways, stands out, um, as a, well, again, subjective here. This is my personal standpoint. I believe it's a better 3D platformer. I'll say that happily. Um, don't come after Gary, come after me. It's fine. Um, but yeah, maybe in the N64 era, I would say something like Diddy Kong Racing was maybe slightly more underappreciated. I know it's probably not how a lot of people see it, but in the grand scheme of things, I think there's not many games from that time frame that you could point to and go like, oh, that's the underappreciated one. Um, but a game that I personally really, really enjoyed, and I look at it and go like, yeah, I don't think people gave this one a fair shake. I don't think it was, not that it was treated unfairly, but I think it was overlooked. Would be Cameo. I really, really liked Cameo. Um, I think again, the world still had a lot of the creativity that is, well, synonymous with Rare. And again, I loved the premise and the way in which your character would be able to transform into these different monsters that again have different unique abilities. And what was so fun about that game, and it's very much a sort of, I think, kind of part of the makeup of some of these studios, like we mentioned, like Double Fine as well, is that you will see a character in one of these games and you look at them and go, oh, they look like this. That probably means they're going to have a this sort of ability, or they'll do this sort of attack. So you'll look at one of the monsters you become in Cameo is a giant plant monster that looks like a Venus flytrap, kind of with a big mouth and things like that. And on first seeing it, you would go like, oh, that's going to bite people and eat little creatures and stuff like that. And it's like, no, its whole thing is that it is wearing a pair of boxing gloves, and and you punch your enemies with them. You know, completely different approach to like how to use a plant creature, like not your typical go-to kind of character design, and get and matching of mechanics. But again, I think that speaks to Rare's sense of quirkiness and their humor and their creativity, their imagination. And I think a lot of that can be found in Cameo. And yeah, like we said, I think that's one of those games that sort of alongside Viva Pinata and stuff like that is one of the last games where you really saw that level of creativity completely unshackled by anything else. They weren't under anybody's thumb. They were still working for Xbox, but I think at that time Xbox was probably still very, very willing to let them do whatever it is they wanted. They had Rare, one of the best, most beloved studios in the industry. Um, they can do no wrong. Let them make whatever they want, and they did for a while. Um, and so yeah, I would say Cameo would be my pick for the most underappreciated Rare game. Be interesting to see what other people think. Because if people left those in the comments.
Okay, yeah.
Um,
Please write it in the comments. For me personally, if you ask me,
mm,
I would say for the N64, Jet Force Gemini. I think that is
yeah,
underrated classic of them, and I would say um, more than Cameo, I would say Viva Pinata, because it is a different game mechanic, and it is like um, uh, not like Pikmin a bit, but a bit like Pikmin, but you have your garden, you have you make some stuff, and then a pinata came and make some laugh with each other, and
Hmm.
if the pinata dies, some chocolate came out of it. This is really a cool mechanic, I think, and yeah, Viva Pinata surprised me a bit, I must say, and yeah, really
No,
cool.
totally.
But like you said, Cameo is also a great platformer, and a really great game on the Xbox 360. And yeah, um, and I want to mention, of course, Star Fox Adventures. On the GameCube, many people forgot that, because many said it was a Zelda clone. Maybe it is, but I liked what they did there, and
Yeah,
yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
yeah, that was a really cool game on the GameCube back then, and yeah, that's for my picks for the underrated Rare games.
Yeah, yeah, good picks. Great picks.
And what do you think about the future of Rare? How
Oh.
can it do? We talk about much about that, and what about the other companies out there who wants to make such games like Perfect Dark, like GoldenEye, like yeah, Banjo and Conker? What would you wish we would see in the future?
I mean, what I wish we would see and what I think we will see obviously are going to be two very different things. I think, well, what I would wish to see is Xbox be very open and liberal with allowing people to use Rare's IP to make games. I would like to see them partner with third-party studios, um, including Rare in those partnerships, um, to solidify um, these IP again in the sort of in the consciousness of the gaming community, um, to pair up IPs with suitable studios. I don't know whether you're going to um, Toys for Bob for Banjo games or a Conker game or something like that, or you know, getting in touch with hell, get in touch with Sega. They just did such a good job with the Sonic racing game. Get in touch with them and figure out a mascot racer with them using all of Rare's IP. You know, do something wacky like that. I, I think you could do fun things with the IP that aren't just direct sequels, which I think would benefit them. It's not going to appeal to every single fan, but again, that's an impossible task. So to go chasing that is the biggest risk of all. But yeah, I think doing that is what I would like to see them do more than anything. Of course, it would be just wonderful just to hear that we're getting Banjo Kazooie 3, and Perfect Dark is being made again. We've worked it all out, and we've got another studio working on it. But these things aren't going to happen. I don't think so, sadly, and I hate to be pessimistic. I hate to sound so down about this, about the future of it. I'm not. I'm not actually down about what's going to happen with Rare. I think Rare are going to be absolutely fine. Um, but at the same time, I know them being fine and what people want from them are two again different things as well. Um, but as far as what I think is actually going to happen, or again, what is more likely to happen, and again, maybe this is also wishful thinking because it's very possible that what actually happens is nothing at all, and we just don't get to see any Rare IP get made. Again, fingers crossed, touch wood, any other rituals you want to do, that doesn't happen. But if I was to think that what is more likely to occur, and again is a sort of middle ground for wishful thinking and reality, is something like what's happened with Ubisoft, where they've actually made this whole new studio sort of partnership, set up to allow others to use their IPs. You know, I would be happy if Xbox were to announce a program, where third-party studios would team up with them. But the idea that we just had about, Toys for Bob doing it, but have it set up so like this is now being treated as a sort of catalog that you can then rent out to other studios and give them, the chance to make a cameo a sequel or spin-off or something, or a new Viva Pinata, you know, get that going as a. And again, this is not going to make everybody happy. I understand, and believe me, I'm not saying this is the best thing that we could ask for. This is me saying this is what I feel like is more likely to occur. But if Xbox were sensible about this and willing to share their IP, I think you could see some really cool and creative things happen. One of the things I've seen which has grown in popularity on PC gaming in particular, are those sort of little idle desktop games you get, where you're running a little farm like Rusty's Retirement, from the developer behind Haiku the Robot. Um, that's a brilliant little desktop idle game kind of thing where you're tending to a farm. Have a game like that for Viva Pinata. Have a little Viva Pinata desktop idle game where you're tending to your pinatas and you're tending to your farm, and you know it's not the sequel what people want, but it's something to see to gauge interest with the audience and see if there are people interested in this IP still. Um, I think that possibly is what we could say see in the future. But again, maybe I'm finding it difficult to remove myself from this and be truly objective, because it's just as
No,
excuse me.
no, I really like your idea, and I have to think about EA Originals. If you know that thing, when the EA think they made some space for that and make something like Fey or something else, and that was something special about EA because EA with the FIFAs and Battlefield and so on, and see something like that was really a good thing, and I really miss Mirror's Edge, for example, of EA, but EA is another topic for that. Um, I think the idea you have is really good,
Well,
what about really the last thing which we talk now is what about Sea of Thieves? I mean, I mean they could continue that until forever.
yeah.
But also they could make maybe a sequel, but how? I mean, it
Mm,
is also good for
yeah,
now for
yeah,
how it is.
yeah, yeah. I think Sea of Thieves will likely continue. They've said it I think it was earlier this year. I reported on them saying that they've got ideas for another 5 years. I think it is. Already lined up. There's a lot of seasons worth of content. They've already said they're going to bring out private servers. Um, the game is constantly evolving. They're constantly listening to player feedback. They're making small adjustments here to things that people have been asking for a while, and then trying to get other things in that people are just sort of just bringing up as quickly as they can. And I think again, they are, I think, one of the best at being very transparent about what they plan on doing. You can go and look at their YouTube channel or follow them on social media, and you will see them every month, several videos going up covering, a dev blog, or an update, or seasonal progression and all that sort of stuff. And they've been doing that since the very beginning. I remember seeing early days of Sea of Thieves when it first launched, and seeing the now head of Xbox Studios um, uh, talking in front of a whiteboard, with writing things down on the whiteboard as they recorded it, explaining like these are the things we're going to be changing to the game. Very, very low key, very, very transparent, and just sort of informal, but shared with the audience, with its fan base. Um, and so yeah, if they're able to keep that, I think that's one of the biggest things. If they're able to keep up that level of transparency and honest communication with the community, even if again everything they say is not going to make them happy, at least they are talking and sharing um, what is going on. And again, now that they've opened up their their sort of early adopters sort of program so that people who are trying out content for Sea of Thieves early before they add it in the new seasons can actually share their experiences of that online. It was previously kept under an NDA, and they have now removed that, and so you can go and watch people playing upcoming content for the game early, um, so that you can give your feedback, so you can see what people are saying about the game. And again, you don't get that a lot from well, you don't get it from everybody, that's for sure. And I commend Rare for doing that. This is it. I think a lot of the stuff that people forget about Rare is that they're an old studio. They're dyed in the wool. They're part of the fabric of this industry in a way that so many studios just aren't. And that's not me trying to discredit them. That's just me pointing out that like Rare have defined this industry in ways that we are still feeling the ripples of to this day. Um, and I think we are very fortunate to have a studio like Rare that is, for the most part, a representation of a healthy, positive studio that is trying to do their best by their team and by their fans, all whilst under the pressure of being owned by the most powerful company in the world.
Yeah,
um,
but that could change too with the most powerful company. If I look
oh yeah,
that the Saudis want to pay something, and I mean the Saudis have also uh, connection into Nintendo, and yeah, we will see about that in the future. And of course, Tencent, not to forget. Um, but I would say you said so much about that, and we talked a lot of where in this podcast, and I really hope that the people enjoy this cast. If so, please comment under this podcast, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. And for where, I would wish that they will continue another uh, couple of years, and they never give up. And yeah, and I hope they doesn't get closed down very soon. That was
gosh, yeah.
that would be very 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 sad, and very bad for the industry, I think. And
Oh, yeah.
and I wish personally we're all the best, and for more 40 years to come.
Yes, 100%. I'm with you on that. Yeah, wish for Rare all the best. Another decade, please, at least. Let's make it 50. And yeah, whatever it is they end up doing, I'm looking forward to seeing it. Um, this was great fun. Thank you, Carrie, for having me on again. This was really, really fun to chat about them and just sort of share our thoughts and passion about Rare and their games. And yeah, it's good to have you back. Doing some podcasting, man.
I mean, you made a rare tattoo at the Gamescom.
Oh yeah, man, yeah. That definitely get me thinking about whether or not to get a permanent one. It was only a little spray on one for fun at Gamescom, but definitely was looking down at it for the next couple of days, thinking like, what, I could get this done permanently. I could do that.
I think if me would be there, that I wasn't, I would pick a Cameo, because they didn't had Perfect Dark, Joanna Dark there, but Cameo would be the next option. But yeah, I wasn't there.
Yep, yep, great choice. Yeah, 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 definitely. But no, I mean, next time, hey, next year we'll have to try and meet up.
I hope so. I hope so. So, I thank you, Harry, for being here and on the cast, and I hope we will make new cast soon. And one thing I want to mention, and I hope you are there with me. I want again. I don't know if I will. I think I will end this YouTube journey this year, maybe.
Hmm.
And I want still make a Game of the Year episode, and I want to have you as my guest in December, and I hope you can do that. And I hope we get much more like Fraser, like Nathan, and much more to that. And that would be really great if we can do that. And yeah,
Mm,
first of all, I want to have you as my guest in December for the Game of the Year. And yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah, that's very kind of you. Thank you. I'd love to be involved in that. And yeah, we could definitely, reach out and see who else can maybe make some time for it because it'll be a busy time of year, obviously. But I'm sure we can get a couple of us together to talk Game of the Year 2025. That'd be great.
yeah, of course. So, thank you again for being here. Thank you for all who are listening to this podcast and support it and so on. And yeah, again, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Kai, for having me. This has been great. And yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed listening. And yeah, hopefully speak to you again soon.
Yeah, see you in the next video. Bye.